Hello and welcome to the Silmarillion Film Project. I'm your co-host Dave Kale, and I'm here as always with that guy from the IGN video. You know him. That guy, of course, is Corey Olson. And if you haven't seen his IGN video, more importantly, if you haven't read the comments on it, I recommend you pause this. If you're not watching it live, pause this, go do that first thing, come back.
Yeah, don't stop watching live.
That's right. Don't stop watching live.
But glance, maybe open a second tab, glance at the comments, and then maybe you can share similar comments with us about this.
Similarly constructive comments.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yes. So no, we're not going to talk about internet hate or even about the Amazon Lord of the Rings show that provoked all the internet hate. Rather, we're going to talk about a fictitious show, of our own construction imagination, the Silmarillion, which is going to run for 40 seasons. We're about less than a tenth of the way through.
Yes.
Well, no, I guess we're in season 5, so technically we're.
This is 6. This is 6. We're like.
Oh yeah, you're right. Season 6. Oh my God, I can't even keep track.
We're like already 13% of the way through our 40-year run. I mean, this is yeah.
Yep. And we're joined by our chief antagonists in this endeavor, the head writers of our Silmarillion Film Project writers room, Nick and Marie, people that we squabble with over minor details and fights about major plot points.
Not nearly as much as we squabble amongst ourselves.
That's true. I'm sure. Yes. And we appear to be joined by a special guest tonight, Nick.
That's right. This is a very special and rather small scale guest there, who is currently sleeping very determinedly on Nick's chest.
Yes.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you
very
much.
Yes, congratulations.
Family.
Thank you.
Mom's doing well?
Mom's doing great. She is healing up very well. She's resting right now, which is why I have a Killian.
Right.
But he seems very comfortable. So.
Yeah, he's clearly in place there, and big sister's doing what she's adjusting.
Yeah. Nessa is she ranges from excited to ambivalent, and so but there's no there hasn't been any resentment or any of the stuff that you read about or hear about.
Right.
She enjoys helping. She enjoys getting stuff for his care, and occasionally picking up a missing pacifier or two along the way.
Excellent service. Yeah.
Yes, it's especially great because she's at the perfect height to retrieve things like that while you are also carrying a baby. So
right, that's very handy. That's excellent. Very cool. So I'm excited to get back into discussions today. It's funny, especially since I started the Other Minds and Hands broadcast on Wednesday afternoons. I find, of course, I'm thinking about adaptation. I'm talking about film more all the time. I keep talking about film because so many of the things that we want to talk about it are things that we've confronted and we've dealt with. We were just yesterday on Other Minds and Hands talking about the time compression, the Numenor time compression in the Rings of Power. And so, we were discussing that. I'm like, oh man, we did the whole time compression trauma last season, and we were, we're talking about the challenges of trying to create a story with elves and humans who just keep dying off all the time, and how do you keep characters alive for long enough to have some character development while your elves are still moving forward. And anyway, it's been fun. Every time now I'm coming back to the Silmarillion Film Project, it's great to kind of in the middle of the context of all this adaptation work that we've been talking about. It's been really cool. So we have some really cool stuff to talk about today, as we're going to be moving into basically like the second quadrant of the show. We're figuring out, we're kind of doing the overview now, ironing things together, how the overall shape of the season is going to go. And then we'll come back into looking at specific episodes when we have some scripts and things to look at too, which will be great. But in the meantime, we still have lots of things to iron out in the whole season. So we've got some really important big questions here that say things like, what's the treehouse like that Luthien escapes from? How are we going to do that on screen? And I hope we're going to finally tackle. I've put off several times. A couple times we've almost gotten to the question of Dairon and what happens with Dairon and what's Dairon's story going to be. And I think I'm really looking forward to finally tackling that tonight and seeing if we can make some decisions and do some fun things with Dairon's character other than just have him vanish, which I've always found. I've always wished for more from the Dairon story, so that'll be fun to think about. First, some quick announcements. We have moots coming up, some soon, some less soon. So we've got Myth Moot is happening this year in June. The most important thing here is that the proposal deadline. So if you want to propose a paper or a session of some sort, that's tomorrow, March 25th, a date that some might note. Is the day on which it's the deadline for so through the end of the day tomorrow, March 25th, to propose a session for Myth Moot, which will be in the vicinity of Leesburg, Virginia. So we're having some issues in with our venue. It's been really cool. So brief story, our normal venue, the National Conference Center, is being dedicated to housing a whole bunch of refugees from Afghanistan, children. So there's like thousands of Afghanistan children are going to be there in the National Conference Center where we normally do our conference. And the main thing that, Signum folks have all been saying as soon as we hear about this is like, oh man, that's a perfect place. That's such an awesome place for refugees. Like, the place is enormous for one thing. You can fit thousands of people there, easy to feed them and easy to. It's going to be cool. So we're really happy that that's happening. It means that we're being moved to somewhere else. We're in the final stages of deciding which place we're going to be shifted to, and the National Conference Center has been awesome. They've been really great in helping us to sort that out. So we don't actually know exactly where it's going to be, but everything will be like from apart from the fact that you'll be putting in a slightly different address into your GPS on the day of June 23rd. It's going to be basically the same. Everything else is going to be the same as far as like pricing and rooms and everything else. So there won't be much disruption, but it will be interesting. Okay. The other two moots that are coming up very soon is Tex Moot, which is happening in 2 days. I'm flying out to go to Austin, Texas tomorrow. So that's going to be very cool. Still time to sign up if you want to participate in Tex Moot digitally. In fact, you can still come in person if you would like to get yourself down to Austin in the next 48 hours, you can do that. Or Sunshine Moot down in Orlando, Florida. Well, not exactly in the middle of Orlando, Florida, but right near Orlando, Florida on April 2nd. So both of those are going to be really fun times. So looking forward to seeing folks again. These are our first spring moots. And I have great hopes that we're going to be able to add a third spring moot, which will be Buckeye Moot in Ohio, which is going to happen probably in May. So we'll be excited to do that too. But Tex Moot and Sunshine Moot are definite. And I guess so for both of them, you can sign up. And don't forget that if you sign up to attend the moots digitally, you also get access to recordings of the whole thing. So if you can't be there for the whole day, you can get recordings of the sessions to watch later on. I've mentioned Other Minds and Hands, which happens at Wednesdays at 4 p.m. are discussions of various issues of adaptation. That's been some really fun discussions. And of course, our space program. Our space program is growing by leaps and bounds, and we have our biggest month ever coming up in April, and some really, really cool new stuff that's out there for May as well. Like you can start. We're doing a Klingon language series. If you want to learn Klingon, we're doing a module on constructed languages. We're doing a module on pity in The Lord of the Rings. This is Tom Hillman teaching a module on the role of pity in The Lord of the Rings. Should be really awesome stuff coming up here. So take a look at that. signumuniversity.org/space to see all the fun upcoming things. All right. Now, back to I'm not gonna stare at the map of Beleriand. Okay, yes I am. Okay, I'm done staring at the map of Beleriand. Let's talk about the treehouse. So I have a visual aid behind me, right? This is my background here is the Ted Naismith version of Luthien Escapes from the Treehouse. And this is a fascinating example. The Escape from the Treehouse is a fascinating example of one of the differences between writing a book and producing a screen adaptation of something, right? Tolkien says that Luthien was confined to this treehouse, right? But he doesn't describe it. He doesn't tell, as so often happens with Tolkien, he gives us very few descriptive details, right? So you can say that kind of thing and make her escape dramatic in the story. But when it comes to actually making the decisions that have to be made to show it. So looking for a second at what Ted Naismith has done here, right? He has a little flet up in the tree, right? With the little tree house on it. And, okay, it's a bit of a drop, right? It looks like it's, maybe 30, 40 feet off the ground? Something like that, right? So you might twist an ankle or something getting down from that. So we're going to put you up in a 40-foot treehouse, and then we're going to take the ladder away, young lady, and you will not be able to climb down. Like that. It's not real satisfying, right? Especially given what we're going to be showing about Luthien, right? How can we do this? How can we have her imprisoned by her father without? Okay, so there's Steve, I think she's in the foreground here, so that's yes. Her height is not an indication of where she's. I think because if you look at the up right there, you can see the roof, right?
Yes.
So it's like that's about elf high, presumably. So that's what I was gauging the distance by. Anyway, the point is this does not exactly look like maximum security, okay?
No.
It's a beautiful picture, but it doesn't. And so we have to think about what are the implications here, right? What are the implications? If we make it look too much like if we say, okay, we need to make the prison intense, right? So that the prison can absolutely hold her in and it's really hard to escape. This is her dad, right? I mean, he's not going to put her into some kind of manacles or something. Like he's not going to put her into that sort of lockdown. So we have to make sure that it's consistent with what we want to show of Thingol's character, right? Not to mention Melian's. I mean, I doubt she's going to stand for that necessarily, right? And then we have but at the same time we don't want to minimize. We want to make sure this is the second time we're really seeing Luthien exert her power, right? In this season, I mean. the Tenuvial scene isn't exactly an instance of her unleashing her power, right? But she does here. Her escape from the treehouse is the first time we see her deliberately set out to use her power in order to accomplish a thing, right? And so therefore, it needs to be, it can't just be, I sneaked out the back door and nobody saw me go, right? So how do we combine all of these things here? How do we make this something that's going to fit with Thingol's character? So now let's back up a second and say, I said we have to be careful about what we say about Thingol's character. What are we trying to say about Thingol's character? What does this show us about Thingol? His goal is to protect her, right? He is afraid. He's in conflict with her because he does not trust her to do what is right for herself, right? He doesn't trust her to not go chasing after Baron, whom he has cunningly sent to his death, right? And so he's trying to protect Luthien from he certainly doesn't want Luthien to share Baron's fate, because he's just tried to arrange Baron to have quite an unpleasant fate, right? And so he wants to keep her from joining him in that. And he thinks that she's not going to be, she wouldn't be safe if she went out chasing him, even if she didn't share his ultimate fate, right? So he's just trying to keep her, but he knows he can't convince her. How do we do this sequence, by the way? Do we have a whole sequence leading up where she's like, I'm going to go after Baron, and he's like, no, you're not, young lady, and she's like, no, really I am, and he's like, well, then I'm locking you in a treehouse. Like, do we have that kind of conversation with Thingol and her? Do we just kind of open episode 4? I mean, we don't have to decide the whole. I mean, this is what you guys do in the script room. I'm not saying we have to do the whole thing scene by scene, but again, I'm just trying to think of the work that we do for Thingol's character, the position that we put him in here.
Yeah, I don't think we can just open the episode with her already imprisoned in the tree. Right. So I do think we need to show how that happened. Right. And therefore, we're going to have to show something of the conversation between her and Thingol. It doesn't have to sound like a go to your room, young lady conversation if we don't want it to. But she could make clear that her intention is to leave Doriath. And we could see Thingol have significant fear when he recognizes how committed she is to following through on this original plan. Like, he thought he took care of the problem already, right. And he is just coming to the realization that no, indeed, he did not.
He did not. Exactly.
I have a question, maybe even a controversial one. Do we think it's essential to lock her in a treehouse at all? I'm wondering if, like, is there one way to get around some of these logistical questions of, like, how could you restrain her? How do you make it look not dumb, putting her in a treehouse? Also, how do we not make it look like Thingol's sending her to her room? How do we make it not look like Thingol's putting his daughter in jail? One way to get around that is to just not even do this sequence, right. And maybe just communicate the fear. Maybe have it be more like she thinks she wants to go. He and Melian talk her out of it, and then eventually she just disappears in the middle of the night. And then you basically get all of this. You can do a lot of the same stuff in terms of Thingol being upset and scared. Maybe he sends guards to chase after her, that kind of stuff. And then we get around some of these logistical stuff. Just want to toss that possibility out there.
It kind of depends on how much narrative time transpires between the time that Baron leaves and the time that we want Luthien to leave. So if she leaves right after, then maybe. But if we want her to hang out, we would need a reason why. So we would need a replacement for the tree, right? Like we need some reason why she doesn't just go off with him immediately, right? And so we need to come up with a replacement for the treehouse, which we may be able to find one that is more logistically sound. But it's important to recognize that the tree house does serve a function in the story.
Well, I was thinking, like, what if what if she's just not restrained? What if she's convinced not to go initially and then changes her mind? That's a little harder to convey on screen. That's a little more tell, don't show, but
so
and you need to convince her the other way afterwards
right?
too.
Yes.
Right.
How would you communicate? How would you display that on screen? Her changing of her mind. So yeah, good point.
So one of the things, Marie, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, it seems like we would have to talk her into something she really doesn't want to do, and then have her be like, "Oh, never mind," 5 minutes later, which would feel like whatever cost there was to the original concession goes away.
Yeah,
so
it feels equally silly.
It's very much the go to your room, because it's like, fine, I will sit here for 5 minutes. All right, you're not watching me anymore. I'm gone.
Right. Yes, I do think one thing that we have to keep in mind, of course, one of the things that is sort of meant to be one of the reasons that we need this sequence, not that we couldn't get around it, but one of the functions that it's going to have, this is when she does the magic cloak, right? This was when she makes the magic cloak, which we were planning to use in Nargothrond, right? Now we could just shift it, right, and have her time in Nargothrond be the time when she makes it. But then, like, what does Huon do? So, having Huon steal back her cloak and give it to her was the kind of mechanism there. So, having her do her magic cloak now. But I do agree, Dave, that the treehouse itself isn't really, like, she lives underground. Like, she lives in Menegroth, right? Menegroth has doors which are guarded, not only doors which are guarded, but magic doors, right? I mean, it's I feel fairly confident that Menegroth has magic doors because Thranduil's halls have magic doors, and that's where they got them from. So I feel fairly confident in saying that Menegroth has magic doors. Because I don't think Thranduil's halls had anything that Menegroth doesn't have, except maybe a barrel trap door. I don't think Menegroth has a barrel trap door. I think that's an innovation, which of course backfires on Thranduil. So there you go. But anyhow, the point is, if she doesn't have to be restrained for it to be difficult for her to get away, right? In order to create the situation, the circumstances that we would need, all she would have to do is for her father to say, "I forbid you to go," and her to be like, "I'm not going to promise that I'm not going to go," and for him to then say, "Okay, I want to keep," say to the guards, like, "Don't let her go," so that his will and her will are clearly in collision. And then now she's in a position where, like, so what do you do? Does she deceive the guards? Does she overpower the guards in some way? Because she's not going to want to do that, right? I mean, that's not going to be a trivial situation. In fact, we have her in a very similar place in Nargothrond, right? Where she is kept not in chains, but under house arrest, but under a house arrest that she would have to fight to get free of. She's going to be even less willing to do any violence in her own home among her own people, right? And so therefore, one could easily see how even if she's just in her normal living quarters, right, but she wants to leave, a magic cloak that conceals her from people's sight and maybe makes people sleepy would still be handy, right? Would still be something she might make in order to facilitate just a departure from Menegroth. Thank you. Goodness. I'm like...
Menegroth, yes.
Yeah. Phew, that's the word. I'm losing. Yes. From Menegroth. Anyway, yeah. So...
at least you know what season we're in.
Yeah. Yeah. At least I do know what season we're in. There we go. Yeah. Most of the time.
So one of the ideas that came up on the boards that kind of deals with a few of these things is the idea of the tree being kind of Huornish, and the tree basically being convinced to just be a prison, right? Which deals with a few things. It's why, like, maybe doors in Menegroth couldn't have held her, but she can't get out of this tree without destroying it, which isn't really her thing. Like, and it could even, we could even kind of not, we'd have to be a little careful with this, but we could even kind of prefigure the matter with Huon in a situation where she kind of convinces the tree
right,
to not be a prison anymore, right?
Right.
And then she puts the guards to sleep and takes off, right?
Yeah. So the first question I ask is, what do we gain by adding a sequence like that, like a treehouse sequence, that a tree is a prison sequence, right? Not just I don't want you to leave. Menegroth is hard to leave, especially if to people that I say shouldn't leave, you know. And I think there is something that we gain there, right? What we gain is Thingol crossing a line, right? We've got Thingol and Luthien, you know, and Dad says, good, I got rid of your skanky boyfriend. And the daughter says, well, I'm going after him. And he says, no, you're not, young lady. And she says, yes, I am. And then he says, okay, I'm going to put you in prison to physically prevent you going after him. Like, that's a big deal. You know, like that there should be something, right? That he has taken an active step to physically incarcerate her. Seems like an important step, especially given the later reconciliation, right? I mean, what he's done to Baron, that's not a great look, right? You know, the whole Silmaril thing, it's not a great thing. But what he does with locking her up, it's a further step. And the first time he could at least convince himself that he is protecting his daughter from, you know, this sketchy human dude, right? Who came in. But when he's locking up his daughter in prison, he's crossing a line in his relationship with her. He's even got to cross a line in his own mind, right? The whole way that he's treating her is fundamentally different now. So in that way, I do really like the idea of there being an actual, like, a separate step. Like, I'm not just sending you to your room. I'm not just telling you that you can't leave this house or, you know, this cave system. I am telling you, I'm locking you away for your own good, young lady, right? Because you can't be trusted. I'm taking your freedom away, right? I'm abrogating your free will because your free will is not to be trusted. It's a significant step, right?
Taking your phone away.
Yeah. Oh man, it's. Is it that bad? I guess it is that bad, right? Yeah. 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 So,
if you've ever spoken to a 13-year-old who has lost access to their phone, yes, it is that serious.
Exactly. It is. It is. It's, you might as well lock her in the treehouse. So, okay. So I do think putting her into some sort of incarceration is a good idea. And if we're going to, we might as well do something with Hiralorn. So coming back to the Huorn idea, though, can I suggest we don't use the word Huorn in the season in which we're talking about Huon all the time, as the confusion likelihood is about 98% if we do that.
Yeah, good point.
Sure, no problem. We'll just use the name of the tree that Tolkien gave the tree, Hiralorn, which is, of course,
completely different.
Yes.
Problem. Yeah.
He's just got an extra syllable. But yeah.
So so Hiralorn. We'll refer to the tree by name.
Hiralorn. Yeah, there you go. I like the idea of the tree the tree being an active participant in the incarceration process does help to solve one of the problems, right? The chief problem that it solves is, how is Luthien going to escape? And it's kind of fun because, again, it's like we will see her incarcerated twice, right? And both times she's in. And actually, the more I think about this, the more awesome I actually think this is. This is a beautiful thing, right? We will see her incarcerated twice. Both times she is incarcerated by her own choice, essentially, right? She's not incarcerated in the sense of being locked away from a prison from which it is physically impossible for her to escape, right? It's not because of some limitation on her power, right? It's because of the limitation of her choice. Like, in order to escape, she could escape. She has the power to escape both times, easily, trivially even. But in order to do that, she would have to cross a line that it would be wrong for her to cross, right? And I like that.
See, I can't believe that these words are coming out of my mouth. But Luthien wins not by destroying what she hates, but by saving what she loves. And this is like, which is why she doesn't just destroy Kelegorm Curfin with a blast of song, or right. burst forth from the tree, or even actually harm anyone in Angband.
Right. Yeah, exactly. No antagonists are harmed in Luthien's escape attempts or anything like that. Yeah. And of course, what this sets up, at the end of the day, is release from bondage is all about Luthien's choices, right? What Luthien will do and will not do, what lines Luthien will cross and not cross. Like, that's the whole heart of the entire season, of the entire story, right? So I kind of love that we're setting that up in the ways that we are. And in a sense, there's also a very sensible escalation here, right? All she'd have to do to bust out of her little tree prison, right, is kill a tree, basically, right? A sentient tree, right? Could we set this up? Could we show her and Dairon like dancing around the tree earlier on or something? Could we show her like a previous relationship between her and the tree or something?
The tree is right at the gates of Menegroth.
Okay.
So anytime you enter or leave Menegroth, the tree is there.
Right.
How awkward does that make anybody coming in or out of Menegroth? Like,
right.
Oh yeah, and
Luthien's
there's the tree where the princess is imprisoned.
Awkward. Yeah. Don't mind me over here in prison, right? They might as well hang her on in a cage, from a post or something. Anyway, yeah. So, okay. Yes, that is, well, it is awkward, but how would the tree imprison her? How would that work? Because, I mean, one of the problems with the tree itself being in the, it's very, confined living space, right? I mean, in the treehouse version, Thingol can at least have a nice swank treehouse made for her, right? It can be a decent apartment, right? That she's limited to.
Well, it's a very, very large tree, and
right.
It has the 3 separate trunks or boles to it, right? Mm-hmm. So the obvious place for the prison would be at the juncture of those 3, and somehow have part on top close over. So right. She doesn't have to be like, the whole tree doesn't have to collapse in on her.
Right. She doesn't have to be actually pod. Like physically restrained.
Right.
Yeah.
But if she is in the place where this joint, and then there's like branches that grow around in a little hanging cage thing like you would do.
Or if you recall the film version of Prince Caspian, at the very end when Aslan makes the portal to come back to Earth, right? And that huge tree untwists itself to create the portal, yes. And then retwists itself when the portal goes away. It could be something like that, where those massive trunks of the tree kind of twist
around. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. I mean, this still leaves Luthien with like a, 5-foot diameter ball in which to live. Maybe, I mean, if it's big enough, maybe it could be a 10-foot diameter ball. Not a whole lot of space, not real comfy, though. We can.
It's a little my side of the mountain, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's a little, yeah, but we could.
I mean,
so
we could just make this tree as big as it needs to be to give her like a decent sized little studio apartment, for her to do spin like thread spinning and whatnot.
Yeah, and I guess if it's high up enough, right? If it's not like the trunks that are surrounding her, but rather she's lifted up into the top and the branches kind of flatten out and then close around so that it could be more like a room that she's, I mean, it would be treehouse-ish, just a treehouse made of tree, right? So it would in that case be more like a flat with a house on it instead of being cocooned, in a cage. But yeah, I think that can work. What's the tree's angle on this? What does the tree think of it? Because the tree likes Luthien, right? I mean, everybody likes Luthien. Who doesn't like Luthien, right? The tree likes Luthien. The tree. Yeah.
Does it? Thingol is convinced the tree that this is for her best. That the tree needs to protect Luthien.
Right. She's in danger and needs to be protected.
Yeah. And this is
the idea was to portray the tree like in a motherly fashion, not in a jailer fashion.
Right.
But I do like, I think you were referencing this before, Corey, like I think what we're seeing is now a repeating pattern. Like it's we've got the tree, we've got Huon later, and then eventually we have Mandos.
Yeah.
These are all powerful beings that Luthien eventually wins over to what she's doing. Yeah, I like this.
Yeah.
This is a great idea.
I think it works really well.
Or square footage notwithstanding. Very
square footage. That's my only concern, but it's it's workable. We can make that work.
This is a very large tree. This is the tree that the entire forest is named after.
Right.
So the tree is as massive and impressive as you need it.
Right. And that also, by the way, mitigates the whole spectacle of imprisoned Luthien by the gate thing. If she's 150 feet up, it's less of a problem when you're walking in and out, right? I mean, of course, you might hear her singing or something, from in the distance, but yeah. Okay, so let's Steve, that's a really great question about Talsarian. Let's hang out. We'll come back to that when we get there. I hope to get there today, and we'll come back to that in a second. I want to focus on the tree though first while we're talking about this. I can easily see how the tree will be persuaded to believe that Luthien needs protecting. Right, that she is in danger and the tree can protect her and it must not let her in and it must not let her out. But that's the harder part, right? If Thingol is crossing a line, how does he convince the tree to cross the line too and refuse Luthien's will? Or to say the same thing from a different angle, what gives Thingol the confidence that the tree's not going to let her out? Right? Why does he think that this is a secure prison? There has to be a reason that he's convinced that it's a secure prison, that the tree will definitely not. Like, she's not going to say, hey, here, Lauren, can you please let me out? And she'll be like, oh, okay. Why wouldn't she, the tree? Why would Thingol be confident in that? So seems to me the weak point in this, plot.
If the tree has been like a gate guardian type character. I mean, we haven't really introduced the tree before, but
right.
assuming that the tree had that role,
right.
We could introduce that in episode 1 if we need to.
Right. We find some way to introduce that.
Mm-hmm. Then Thingol might trust that the protecting and safety thing would translate to the tree because he told the tree to. Like, he's king and everything in the forest listens to him. He's probably quite comfortable with that by this time. And yes, the audience knows he's crossing a line with his daughter, but he doesn't see the line. If he knew he was crossing that line, he might think twice. So he's not gonna recognize that he might have underlings who are gonna start questioning his orders about this matter. So I realize it's a little weak because the Thingol didn't think of it, and then Luthien asks the tree, and the tree lets her out, and it's like, Bill should have thought of that.
What's the tree's like relationship with Thingol? Like, maybe we can establish this tree is like a really is a trusted guardian with a strong will, and isn't just gonna like blithely let Luthien out. And maybe they have maybe the tree is loyal to Thingol. Or to Melian, maybe there's a relationship with Melian.
Well, I was thinking about Melian and but that opens up the bigger question of what's Melian's whole attitude. I mean, I can't see Melian. It's one thing for Melian not to resist him, Thingol, I mean, right? For her not to work against him. That I can easily see Melian doing. I can see Melian standing back and saying, this has gone from bad now to slightly worse. And, whatever, I'm not going to be a part of this. I can't see her working with him. Like, so my first thought, Dave, was, if the power of Melian, if Melian has a word with the tree, right, and says, don't let her out, that's a harder thing to overcome, right? It would seem to me. Mm-hmm. But I can't see Melian doing it. I can't see Melian participating in this scheme. So I think it's enough that she's not overruling Thingol in doing this. Like, that's about as far as I can see Melian going in collaboration with this bad plan. So I don't think that's an option.
It seems like we're going to have to spend some screen time with the tree to establish the tree as like a sort of a stalwart, unchangeable like character, so that the audience is surprised when the tree is won over to Luthien's cause, right?
Yeah. If the tree is essentially, if we establish the tree as a kind of symbol, or like, it's like synecdoche, right, of the whole forest, right? It is, what we have here is a representation of Thingol's authority. He's the king, right?
Yes,
he
go.
rules this land, and the land is going to obey him, right? He's Luthien. She's powerful. She's appealing. Everybody loves her, but she doesn't outrank her father, and Thingol would, I mean, Maria, goes back to what you were saying about Thingol having reason to believe, right, that his authority is absolute here. And what he's done in locking her up in the tree, he has taken the step of exerting what he believes to be absolute authority against Luthien. Which means, by the way, there is some violence that she's going to have to do, right? She does violence not against the tree, but against her father's authority, she's going to stand up against that, and she's going to resist her father's authority. So there will be one thing that will be harmed in her escape, and that is her father's reputation, right? But that's deserved, right? That's his own fault for doing that, and for wrongly applying that authority. So in the end, Hiralorn is going to it's going to be like a rebuke to Thingol, right? In the end, he's put the tree into an invidious position, right, by exerting his authority, and but exerting his authority to have her do ultimately a wrong thing, right, a bad thing. as Luthien will convince her to do. And that, of course, is also directly parallel to Huon, which is precisely the situation that Huon is going to be in, right? So once again, we can see sort of the setups and the parallels, and I think that works. That works pretty well. So all we really have to do is establish Thingol's authority, right? So that's so I'm going to pass the buck. That's the challenge for you guys in episode 1 or 2, is to establish Thingol's absolute authority, like that we know that what Thingol wills and decrees, like the land obeys him, right? And one of the reasons actually I also think that this is important is that a lot of emphasis, appropriately, has been laid on the girdle of Melian, right? Which risks putting Thingol into a quasi-Celebornish situation, right? I mean, he is, of course, the proto-Celeborn in this regard, playing second fiddle to his vastly superior wife. But he's not in the same position because he was a character on his own in the show before he met Melian, and we've done more with him. So I'm not like worried about him just being a complete cipher or something. But yet again, showing his real authority, like his real decision making, which we, by the way, are already going to be emphasizing in Melian's submission to him, right? She's going to let his word stand even when she thinks he's making, bad decision after bonehead decision here. And so how we handle that, how we show that, it can also influence this, I think, right?
Yeah, I don't think we necessarily need to show Thingol ruling that tree prior to this happening. But we do need to remind the audience that he's king of Doriath and everyone and everything in his kingdom obeys him.
When the refugees arrive, having him show up to kind of pave the way for them through the forest, in the same way that the elves traversed, rivers and forests in Beleriand on the trek westward. We had them convincing trees to be bridges and to get out of the way to allow them to pass and stuff like that. So we've set a precedent for this, and having Thingol remind us not only of his authority but of his ability to do this probably would be a good idea.
Right.
And then when the tree listens to Thingol, like when he basically tells the tree to create the little, open up and then close up, when the tree does exactly what he says, we're going to think, oh, this tree listens to him.
He speaks and it happens. And we establish that clearly. Yeah, Nick, I like that about him, commanding the forest and the forest shifting to, showing that kind of authority. And then as a setup to his establishing the tree prison.
So we just need Thingol to do a "so let it be written, so let it be done" thing, and then we're good.
Yeah. Well, and we can give him a really impressive speech to give to Hiralorn, right, when he locks Luthien up, like heavily invoking his authority and making it really clear that if the tree lets her out, the tree is like rebelling against him in a way that it's obviously not going to do or going to want to do. So I mean, we can kind of beef that up a little bit there. And what Luthien is doing is not just talking it around, right? She's not just convincing it to side with her against her dad. She's not. What is she doing then, by the way? How does she escape? No, she's still going to need to make her cloak, and there are going to be elvish guards also at the foot of the tree. So, wrapping herself in her cloak of darkness so that she can escape will still be a thing that she's going to want to do. But she's going to have to interact with the tree separately, right?
She could invoke her own authority as not only the princess of Doriath, but the daughter of Melian.
Right.
You know, the guardian of the forest, or the guardian.
Though, if this is also going to be the moment, right? I mean, again, the parallels just abound in this season, right? This is a very little version of her song before Mandos at the end, right? We start. She kicks off her career with her song before Hiralorn, right, at the start. And then, and she's going to get Hiralorn to relent as she's going to let Mandos to relent.
Moving the unmoved.
Moving the unmovable. Yeah, exactly. So...
With Huon, part of what she's going to do is convince him that Baron's a good guy.
Right.
So she's going to tell Huon stories about Baron and how he treats animals and how he's a kind person.
Right.
Obviously much better than this Celegorm jerk, but you know.
That's right. Yeah.
Like, Celegorm also speaks to animals and all, you know, so like there's overlap there.
Right.
But with the tree, the question is, you know, how could Luthien convince the tree that her cause is more right than Thingol's cause? Because I don't think she can try and pull rank when her father clearly outranks her.
Yeah.
So I think she has to make some kind of persuasive argument about how her mission, her goal, is far better than what Thingol's trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
And if the tree is all about, but I have to keep you here and keep you safe because that's what I was told to do, she's like, but this is more important than my safety.
Right. Exactly.
We talked about having the tree acting almost as a mother here.
Right.
But how do trees care for their offspring? They release them.
Right. True. Assuming the nut is is the offspring, but yeah.
Well,
no,
yeah, but
not?
it's
you drop them, you let them go, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, so
I'm
so
laughing because JJ is suggesting that she tricks the tree into carrying her into a part of the forest where all the trees have been cut down. Anyway, sorry, never mind. Go ahead.
I know that's your favorite part of Lord of the Rings.
That's absolutely the best part. Second only to hauling Frodo and Sam into Osgiliath. But anyway,
well, by rights, they shouldn't even have been there.
No, they really shouldn't. Anyway, sorry, Marie, you were just going to make a serious comment.
Well, I was wondering whether we want her to convince the tree or to use power of song to make the tree do what she wants as far as releasing her like a nut rather than hurting the tree to escape, because she could still use her magic powers, not harm the tree, and get out without necessarily winning the tree over.
Yeah,
so if we want to do more magic or more persuasion.
I think persuasion. Well, but it can be magical persuasion. I mean, there's no reason it can't be magical persuasion, especially if the magical persuasion is something along the lines of like what she would have to. Okay, so you're trying to convince the tree to let you go, right? You're right now. So Marie, you're right. What you were saying before, you've got to convince the tree that your reason for going is in fact greater than you're not going to say Dad's lying, because he's not lying. She is in danger, and she is going to be in danger, right? That's actually perfectly true. The thing she has to convince the tree of is that it is better, right? It is better to, she is going to put herself into danger, but that's because she needs to do that in order to save other people from danger. Anyway, so the sacrifice of self, again, like Luthien's choice later on before Mandos, right? Again, we are sort of setting up the way. She is binding herself to Baron. She is going to share in Baron's danger and in Baron's fate. Okay, anyway, yeah, you got to convince the tree of all this. But in order to convince the tree of all this, first you have to communicate with the tree, right? And it's not just a matter of like speaking tree or something like that, right? Nick, I'm coming back to like the acorn thing here, though it's not an acorn because it's not an oak. But anyway, I don't even know what beech seeds look like. But anyway, who knows? But the point is, like, she's got to put this in a way that the tree is going to understand, right? That, I think, Maria, is where the magic comes in, right? Because she does the elvish magic thing, right? And I'm thinking here explicitly of the Finrad and Sauron song duel, right? With the how the song duel works is the magic invoking concepts and ideas which then are themselves in conflict with each other, right? And whoever's song is stronger, like is it the freedom or escape song that is going to come true, or is it the and then ultimately, of course, the kinslaying, and then things go downhill from there, right? The doom, the incarceration. Here, there would be two ideas at war, right? Thingol's command is one thing, right? It's not a song duel between Thingol and Luthien exactly, but Thingol's command is there in the mind of the tree, right? And Luthien has to oppose that image in the mind of the tree with the image that she is going to put forward. And again, I don't see like a dialogue, a Socratic dialogue with the tree, right? I don't see like an argument with the tree. It's not about, but this is not a debating club. But for her to sing a song and create this conflicting image, right? Where she shows the tree, like what happens if the tree lets her go, right?
So according to Google, the seed of a beech tree is a little burr that opens up and lets the seed out.
How is it?
Yeah.
Well, there's your image. There's your visual image. Yeah. There you go.
And it attaches to a passerby also. Like it attaches to other animals, and that's what the bird does.
Yeah, it only has a few. It's not like the whole. It's not a whole complete burr. It's just but still.
So it's not like a like a horse chestnut or something. It's with like the spiky thing. No,
it's not completely covered.
It might depend on the beech tree, because I'm seeing a bunch of different ones.
European beech trees. This is Tolkien. It's European beech tree.
Okay, that's fair.
Right. By the way, I really like if somebody was on the boards was comparing Hira Lorn to Old Man Willow, except like not evil. Right. And I like that, except we obviously can't call her Old Beach Lady because that just wouldn't work in the same way. Even though Hira Lorn is awkwardly similar to Huon, but whatever. Okay. So it's right. So we have the visual metaphor then that she would use in her song, right? To show, and that would be a way to translate this into, tree language, right? So to show the tree, but again, the point is what she would be arguing is not just, it's not simply you should release me. Again, this is not simply like he says no, I say yes, I'm stronger, so you're going to let me go instead of not letting me go, right? It can't be just a kind of mental arm wrestling between her and Thingol. It's got to be, again, the two different opposing images. Hira Lorn is got to be choosing a positive thing, not just a negative thing. It's not just like, okay, I agree to disobey. Can't be the conclusion that Hira Lorn is being pushed to, right? It has to be a positive thing. So what is the positive vision that she's pushing? To Huon, she pushes the vision of Beren and how like worthy Beren is, right? Worthy of helping. Don't you want to help me help him, right? Is kind of the message to Huon. What's the message to Hira Lorn then?
I think that relying on the seed imagery will help us there. And Steve brought up earlier about how much like the Ents themselves don't want to keep Saruman prisoner, right? It makes them sad,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
And so they let him go because, like,
the caging of live things. Yeah.
Right. Now, of course, we know that old man Willow has no problem restraining things.
Right.
So it's not like trees are universally opposed
Well,
to the
that's what we call a
thing.
red flag.
Yes.
when that
Yes.
happens with Old Man Willow. Yeah.
But she could appeal to the idea of her being kept in this tree for all time, and like how the seed that never emerges from its pod never grows and never becomes a tree of its own, and stuff like that. I mean, I'm a little nervous of the if you love something, let it go message, because that is a little simplistic. But this is the first foray into this.
It is,
for her.
and
we don't have. It's going to add, like, complexity is going to be added to this.
You're right. I mean, we have all these parallels, right? We have her escape from Hiralorn, her escape from Nargothrond, her in front of Tol Sirion, her in Angband, her before Mandos, right? So we have Luthien in all of these situations, and there's, like, on the one hand, there's obvious escalation all the way through, right? But I think one of the ways in which we make sure that these parallel situations are cool and not tedious or trite is by not just upping the stakes, right? Because, of course, that can get super lame, right? And now, like, the next boss fight is with somebody who's even bigger than the previous boss. Like, that's not what we're going for, right? But basically, it's not just that there's more at stake, but there are different things at stake. And that even she herself grows as a character. She doesn't know, right? The Luthien who's singing to Hiralorn is going to be in a very different place from the Luthien who's going to be singing before Mandos, right? She will have learned much and progressed much in her understanding of what's going on. So having her song to Hiralorn be sort of more simplistic, in a sense, I think is not a horrible thing, right? That, yes, she's going to be in danger, but seeds always are. Right? When they, seeds are very vulnerable. Seeds can always get, and frequently do, get snapped up and eaten, right? By birds or squirrels or any other number of things, right? Releasing the seed is always dangerous. Danger. And again, the danger is going to be the thing, like, she must be protected at all costs. And I like the idea, both with the release of the seed and with, as we were talking about, and as Steve was saying, the Treebeard's not disliking the caging of live things. I really like how that works, because it really emphasizes that what Thingol is asking is something unnatural. Like, this is not good. This is not, and it's true on every level. It's true. Right. He's putting the tree in an invidious position. He's acting wrongly by his daughter. It's not right. It's not right. And the tree will see that. Right. And she will make the tree see that. But the only way she can make the tree see that is through it's the power of her song. It is her magic that's going to, and her power that's going to enable her to get free. But she can't just overwhelm it. She can't just overpower the tree. Because then if she just dominates the tree and compels the tree to let her go, then that's very much the wrong path for Luthien to be heading down there, I think. Mm-hmm.
Luthien is going to be very polite and say please.
She's going to, yes. I'm going to show you why it is the right thing to disobey Thingol and instead to let me go.
Speaking of which, and I don't know if you guys talked about this while I was doing the baby handoff. Are there consequences to this tree of this thing?
No, I don't think so.
So the tree gets off scot-free.
Yeah, absolutely. The tree escapes. Okay. Well, here's my thought about that.
We don't come back later and Thingol is presiding over an enormous bonfire.
That's right. That's right. Right. Yeah. Daddy's gonna build a big new woodshed or something, right? I've got a whole like a beechwood cabin are being erected over there. But what I can see, if we wanted to, I could imagine a scene. It would seem a little bit odd not to close the loop with Thingol. Like we last leave Thingol, making this momentous pronouncement in front of the tree and invoking all of his authority. And then we see her leaving and then we never get back to Thingol until, Caligorm sends the letter to him, right? Like that would be weird. I think we do need to close that a little bit. And if we did, the logical scene, it would seem to me, would be Thingol upset at the tree, right? He might even perhaps make some intemperate remarks about what he might decide to build with the tree, right? The tree, because the tree has rebelled, right? I mean, this is serious, right? And I imagine Melian being involved in that discussion, basically. This could be used as a step towards, I don't know how quickly we want him to go. But this would be that scene, the after she's escaped scene, would be part of his progression towards ultimately repenting and turning back and getting better with them at the end. I was kind of wondering, like, that's something I was wondering about, if there are indeed no consequences for the tree. Is that an implicit acknowledgement from Thingol that it was wrong to even ask the tree to do this in the first place, and that like maybe he gets a glimpse of the psychic song battle conversation that they had, and like starts to understand that like basically is like, I can't really blame you. You stood no chance. You lost fair and square. Like right. Luthien kicked your butt. You couldn't have won that battle. But you're right. Like if he does acknowledge that, it must be the first step towards repentance. I think that Melian will see that.
I want Melian to be the voice saying that, because I don't think Thingol's going to figure it out on his own.
Yeah, that makes more sense, actually.
Thingol's just mad that the tree didn't listen to him.
And she
frustrated that Luthien's
gone.
So he
is getting out the axe.
And afraid. Yeah. No, I think he's like, you had one job. Like,
right.
What is this? So
all you had to do was continue to be a tree in the shape that I left you.
Right.
Like when I tell a tree to stay the way it is, I expect that to happen pretty regularly.
Yeah.
Right.
So he's just upset and reacting and worried about where Luthien has gone now. Melian's the one who can gently point out to him, like, the tree had to do the right thing, and what you told the tree to do was maybe not the right thing.
Right? Like gentle hint number 3 that you're not going in the right direction here, husband mine. Yes, exactly. And even to have in Thingol's trajectory, right? One of the other trajectories that I think is gonna. I mean, there's got to be some. There's some gap between him and Melian that opens up here, right? Which we're gonna see with that "O King, you have devised cunning counsel" conversation, right, earlier on, and it can widen, I think, here. That's the relationship between Thingol and Melian isn't the main story, right? That's like the D plot of the Doriath storyline, right? In other words, so the relationship between him and Luthien is the much more prominent element there. But a subplot of that is him and Melian as well. And so yes, showing this can also be a kind of low point, I would think, for Thingol. For Thingol and Melian, I mean, for Thingol in his relationship with Melian in particular. I think so. Some scene with the tree and Thingol and Melian would be good, I think, to to sort of show where they are here. So
just to make sure, we definitely don't want a scene of him like calling out Norn the Fourth to like bring out his axe or anything like that. Like we're sure.
No, not so far as that. Not so far as that. Yeah. I don't think we have him, lighting up a little fire next to her like Sam did with Old Man Willow or anything. Getting out his little hatchet, starting to gnaw on the tree. No, we're not going to go do any of that. But I think we can show. This gives another really good Melian opportunity for her to try another teaching moment, right? To try to show her husband what's going on here. Okay. I feel like there was another question I was going to ask about this, but let's come back for a second to what Steve was asking about before, because Steve was saying, with the whole Luthien being nonviolent thing, Tolsirion seems to stand out in that, like, she's, she convinces the tree to let her release her piece. She overcomes the prison, not by busting out, but by getting the tree to release her. She gets out of Nargothrond not by busting through and knocking people out, but by getting Huon to help her. She gets through Angband by putting everybody peacefully to sleep, but she goes to Tolsirion and blows up the place, right? So I see the contrast there. And it's not quite true that no one is harmed, because we were going to kill off Thurin Gwethel in this explosion. The main difference, it seems to me, is that, first of all, in neither case, that is, neither with the tower nor with Thurin Gwethel herself, is Luthien destroying. I mean, this is why we talked about this when we were talking about the Thurin Gwethel plot. Exactly what I didn't want was a toe-to-toe fight between Thurin Gwethel and Luthien, in which Luthien killed her. Or brought about her destruction directly in that way, like intentionally, like, I'm fighting you, I am overcoming you, and as a result, you're going to die. That's exactly what I wanted to avoid there with Luthien. And we have avoided it. What brings about the destruction of Tolsirion and what brings about the death of Thurin Gwethel, both, is the result of Sauron's choices and her choices, right? I mean, the undoing of their evil plot, which releases the power which they, in the release of the prisoners whom they have incarcerated, it's that release which causes the destruction. So she doesn't blow up the tower, right? She doesn't cast fireball and explode it. Nor does she kill Thurin Gwethel, right? Thurin Gwethel only dies because she herself is there trying to, betray Sauron, and she's seeking power for herself. So again, both of them receive the consequences of their own, and with Luthien not even, it's totally unintended on Luthien's part. All she does is set the prisoners free. What happens when that happens, I don't think is her responsibility. So I think all we have to do is just be careful how we depict it, right? If we were to show Luthien standing in the middle of like this swirling whirlwind of lights and power, like, destroying the tower, yeah, that would be a pretty different look from anything we have Luthien doing anywhere else. But I don't think we need to do that. And in fact, I think it would be pretty cool to have the song which destroys the tower be quite a quiet and gentle song, basically.
And mostly about releasing the prisoners from bondage, because that's what brings down the tower.
Exactly.
In our version.
She would certainly not be intending to bring down the tower. She's not going to be intending to blast the tower.
Baron is in there after all.
Baron is in there, right? She's not wanting to blow it up. But she is wanting to open the doors. And opening the doors is going to release the power which Sauron has to. I mean, the reason he's imprisoned them is for power, right? Yeah. So, I think it's all about, like, what she's doing isn't different. It's not like this is in fact a less nonviolent act on her part. It's not less nonviolent, but it could look discordant if we're not careful. So I agree that I think that we need to be careful there, and I think that the key person who will make this work is Philip Menzies. It's all about the score for her song, right? If her song that releases the prisoners sounds like violent and explosive, then it will be then it'll set the wrong tone, right? But
so let's hope he hasn't already begun working on that.
Yeah. We can reduce the sound effects budget in that song. But no, I mean seriously, I think it's, she does what she does, and the release of the prisoners does what it does. I think that can all work. Again, it's as long as we don't have her turning all green like Hobbit Galadriel and unleashing power to blast the tower, then I don't think we've fundamentally changed her situation there. Okay. I do want to make sure to address that. All right, so let's talk about Dairon. Okay. The really big question: what is Dairon's story going to be? Okay, what is his character arc? Do we have him? So we know that there's an unrequited love situation here, just on some level or other, right? We don't necessarily have to have. We talked about this a little bit before, right? And I think, as I recall, you guys were inclined, Maria and Nick, you guys were sort of inclined to not have him like hoping and assuming they were going to get married, but maybe not have it be quite like an overt love triangle situation with Dairon and Baron and Luthien.
Love triangles are difficult with elves, mostly because we're kind of explicitly told that they kind of only fall in love with their intended person who's going to be with them forever. And so the idea that Dairon is romantically in love with Luthien seems a little strange given that information.
And we certainly don't want to put Luthien in the position of being like, I'm going to marry Dairon. Like, he and I are intended. And then I see Baron and, oh my goodness, now I'm swept away. And oh, my head says Dairon, but my heart says Baron. Like, we don't want Luthien in that position.
Please,
for sure.
No.
Those are terrible stories.
Those are terrible stories. Yes, I totally agree.
So,
yes.
Yeah, I think the unrequited thing works to an extent. Like, I understand what Nick's saying with how much pining do we want to put into Dairon's character.
Right.
Because he might just come across looking a little whiny. Like,
right.
So I would prefer that we portray him as someone who has very much accepted that Luthien's not into him. He knows that and has known that for a long time. And he's like, I'm fine. We're friends. And yeah, I love her and she's amazing. And if she were interested in me, we'd be having a different conversation.
I'm not saying no. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
But
right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I think from that point of view, like, he's resigned himself to the situation and he accepts it mentally and is like, yeah, of course. I know she's not into me and I respect that. And
right.
I wish her all the best. I hope she's happy with her life. But meanwhile, we'll make music and dance in the woods and everybody will be happy. Until she does fall in love.
Right. That doesn't mean that he's enthusiastic about the scruffy looking human who stumbles into the woods and yes.
Right. Because as her very close friend, he has some concerns here.
Yeah.
As anyone
very plausible
would.
Concerns. Yes.
Right. Like, what are you doing?
Right.
Please don't.
Right. And remember when I said I was okay with like not marrying you? Well, yes, but it turns out actually when push comes to shove, I'm not super okay with you marrying that loser, right? When it comes to it. So yeah, I mean, I think there could be an element of that too. We do have, so the one the unrequited love situation that the like love triangle situation that comes to my mind immediately is the abortive Galadriel Celeborn love triangle that we get a reference to in Unfinished Tales. We get a speech from Celebrimbor to Galadriel, right? Being like, hey, I know you weren't into me. You chose that other guy and whatever, but we could have been great, but it's fine. Anyway, here, take this shiny gem, right? That I made for you. So like, we know that kind of thing can happen. Having Dairon, the thing that's not going to happen is the whole, like, I don't see him having a, like, if I can't have her, nobody else can have her kind of reaction. But he would, with brotherly concern, be alarmed about Beren and what was going on here, and has she in fact lost her mind, right? And it would certainly seem to him to be only prudent, right? Not to mention loyal, to inform her father about this sketchy situation that is unfolding, right? So,
and isn't this something that you'd want to wait and think about for a couple hundred years before jumping into?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think marriage with a mortal is exactly at the top of the list of things you want to give a couple centuries of thought to before you jump into it, for sure. No, absolutely. So, okay, so Dairon is an antagonist to their relationship, but he's not a, jealousy crazed, irrational antagonist to this situation. Nor is he a spurned lover, nor is she inconstant in her affections, transferring them from Dairon to Beren. Okay, so what happens? Oh, and I agree with Anthea there that she said, I'd like to see him try to talk to Luthien before going to her dad. Yeah, agreed. Totally. He doesn't just go and inform on her behind her back, he
tries to talk her out of it first.
Yeah, he tries to talk her out of it. And then when she's having none of that, then there will come a point where he really has no choice but to tell her dad. It would be faithless, disloyal in him as subject and as her friend even, right? Not to tell her dad.
I mean, humans are banned from Doriath, so
a law is being broken here. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not allowed to be there, regardless of whether or not Luthien likes the guy.
Right. This is a matter of national security here.
And everything, remember, is what happened when Celegorm kept a big secret from Thingol. Not a good look.
True. Yeah, exactly. Keeping secrets that come out later, that gets awkward in Doriath. So, yes. Okay, so we can have Dairon be the Fink without having him look like a horrible person. Okay, so far we're kind of preserving Dairon's integrity. We're being very, we're treating Dairon with kid gloves here, which is fine. I'm down with that. Where does he go? Where does he end up? So now she leaves, she escapes from the tree, and she's off. Does he leave before or after the letter from Celegorm arrives in Doriath? He's going to leave, right?
Well, this depends at what point we want to deviate from the story as written, so to speak. The idea, of course, is that he's going to get concerned when Luthien is lost out in the wilderness, which happens after the fall of the Tower of Tolsirion, when the escaped prisoners return to Doriath and tell the story of what happened there. Everyone's like, Luthien is in the wind, essentially. And that's the point at which someone from Doriath could go look for her, presumably.
Right.
In fact, I'd be very surprised if that doesn't happen. If Thingol. I know the story doesn't mention it, but the idea that Thingol just sits in Doriath and doesn't send anybody out after it just seems bonkers to me.
Well, especially given that he does do that with, like in the Turin story, he sends multiple posses out to search for the lost people, but he doesn't ever do that for his own daughter. It does seem strange. I agree.
Yeah. So at what point in that story does Dairon go looking for her? That's up to, yeah.
We had talked about Thingol wanting to go, but being talked out of going himself. This seems like the relevant point. Like if Dairon would be the logical person to send, no, Beleg is the logical person to send. How about the competent one? Maybe we try that. I could send my greatest warrior, or I could send my greatest woodsman, or I could send the minstrel. Come
Who
to think of it,
happens
this is
to
not
be best friends with Luthien.
Close to her,
so if anyone is going to convince her to return, Dairon has a better chance than Mablung.
Yes, though he has a much worse chance than Beleg of finding her in the first place.
Agreed.
Yeah.
The thing we got to make sure that we do, though, is if we send somebody out, especially a named character, if Thingol is in Doriath sending out unnamed groups of rangers searching for Luthien, that doesn't have to pay off. Like, that's just a thing that he's doing in the background. But if we send a named character out after her, we kind of have to pay that off in some way.
Right.
And we just have to, like, it shouldn't be that hard to engineer something like that, but you kind of have to do something about that.
So the searchers could find the people trying to return from Tulsirian and take them to safety in Doriath.
Okay.
If they left before
the return of the prisoners.
Right.
Okay.
We're talking about the people who are escaping after the prisoners after Tulsirian's
is destroyed.
Broken.
Yeah, the ones that Luthien has released.
Okay.
Those prisoners, because if someone's searching for Luthien, those prisoners would have news of Luthien, so you could have a scene where they convey that news and bring them back to Doriath.
The problem is the
accomplished
trigger
something
for it, right? Because there are two potential triggers on the Doriath side, right? One is the letter from Caligorm. Yeah, it's the later one. So you've got the letter from Caligorm. Now it makes all kinds of sense to send Mablung there, right?
Oh yeah.
Like I want Mablung of the Heavy Hand going to negotiate that particular treaty, right? That seems like just the thing. But then the second trigger would be the prisoners arriving from Tulsirian, which is going to happen pretty soon afterwards, and would explain if Beleg and Mablung are both on their way to Nargothrond or in Nargothrond, right? News then, the Tulsirian thing happens pretty quickly, right? I mean, she, books it straight up there, and then they come back. So, Dairon could be the only one left, like the only named character left that isn't Thingol in Doriath, essentially. Beleg and Mablung are already, they were sent to Nargothrond, right? And now there's just Dairon, and Dairon's like, let me go. Let me see if I can find her. She's not like being held for ransom as she essentially was being before. So it's not the same kind of crisis management situation. Now she's just, Nick, as you said, she's in the wind. Right. And may need help. So somebody to find her and try to help her and hopefully convince her to come home. That would be Thingol's desire, would be convince her to come home. And Dairon would be best equipped to do that. The most likely to convince her to come home of her own free will.
So I got to say that I find the Dairon goes out, doesn't find Luthien, but does find a bunch of escaped prisoners, and so he brings them back to Doriath. I don't find that particularly satisfying as a payoff for that.
Well,
because it doesn't actually pay off his leaving. I'm wondering if it could be engineered for him to come upon them after Baron has lost his hand.
So I was thinking about that too. Yeah, I was thinking about that too, because that's the only other opportunity, right? Because they're back to Doriath after Angband.
Right.
He would either have to find them before they go to Angband, or find them after Angband, but there's a really tight window. I mean, they get rescued by eagles, and the eagles generally don't rescue people who have a big window of opportunity for being saved, right? So he'd have to be coming up right as they were,
Well, how far are the eagles going to take them? Presumably not to Menegroth.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we know they fly over Gondolin, right?
Yeah.
So to the borders of Doriath, sure.
The borders of Doriath.
But if the eagles are dropping them off in the borders of Doriath, and Dairon has been wandering around the region there, he could come on them and help them back into Doriath.
That is an interesting suggestion.
Need him to run into them at that point in the story.
It also gives.
It's not like the girdle wasn't going to let them back in.
Right.
So,
but I mean, they're not exactly in great shape, and it also gives a really interesting opportunity for Dairon, Baron, Luthien moments, right? With Baron, without his hand, Dairon to help him. I mean, Dairon's going to have a different perspective, just as Thingol is going to have a different perspective on Baron and Luthien. So will Dairon at that point.
Right. Dairon's saying, okay, let's take this guy back to Thingol's court, but for different reasons this time.
But for different reasons. Right, exactly. Yeah. Actually, that's really fun. I hadn't even thought of that parallel. Yeah. Right. Dairon once again, brings them back to Thingol's court. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I do have a possible alternative to that, and that's like, if I think about Dairon as Luthien's best friend.
Yeah.
Right? Dairon, when he finds out that she has escaped Nargothrond, right? Dairon seems uniquely, like, I feel like Dairon would assume that Luthien is going to get to Angband. And so that he himself makes a beeline there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all we have to do is have him have one encounter with an eagle somewhere along the way, somewhere during the season, for him to be involved in the eagle's rescue of them at Angband.
Because we aren't given any reason exactly why the Eagles show up. I mean, apart from the fact that Thorondor is on top of things, right?
Right.
And,
right.
Generally on the ball.
But you don't just, request eagle lifts.
Yeah.
And Dairon doesn't know the Eagles. So.
Maybe he doesn't, but that's what I'm saying. All he has to do is encounter them.
Manwë sends eagle lifts,
right?
So, yes, no, exactly. Yes. You can't just arrange for that,
right?
But yeah, but I think it's workable.
He doesn't have to specifically call them either. All he has to do is call out for help in some way.
All we would need is him, basically he would just have to tell Thorondor the story. He just tips off Thorondor of what's going down, basically. All we need to do is get him to meet an eagle, right, to whom he can tell the story of what he's doing, where he's going, why he's wandering around. Oh yeah, I'm looking for Luthien. They're totally in Angband. They're probably going to be in desperate trouble. And then Thorondor hears about it, and then he, having checked in with the boss, takes unilateral action. So Dairon isn't. Yeah, it's not like he's.
Right, Dairon would have to be expressing his fears of what's going to happen to Luthien once she gets to Angband,
and his
a reasonable fear.
His convictions, and Nick, I do like that. That's my favorite part of this, is that Dairon, everyone else, or most everybody else, Thingol anyway, they're all worried because Luthien is on the loose and likely to come to harm, right? Oh man, Morgoth is hunting high and low for her, which he is, right, at this point. Morgoth is hunting high and low for her. She's going to get into trouble. And Dairon is the only one who's like, she's going to Angband and she's totally going to make it there. Right. Like this is happening. Right. This is not what if she gets caught in the wild. This is what's going to happen when she gets to Angband and takes the Silmaril, because I know Luthien, that's going to happen. Right.
Right.
So he's the only one. So like, they're all like, okay, we must like, set up quadrants and like search for her here and there. And he's like, I'm not searching. Yeah. I know where she's going to be. She's going to Angband and I'm headed there. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And it one of the things that I really like it is kind of sweet that he actually has more confidence in her than Baron does.
Yeah.
Like, not
right.
Like Baron's like, no, it's too dangerous. You stay here. I'll go get myself murdered. Right.
Right. Yes, exactly. No, I like, JJ says it sounds kind of like everybody searching for Frodo and only Sam running straight back to the boats where he knows he's going to be. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Because Dairon is her Sam.
Dairon knows her better than anybody else. It's not a precise parallel. In fact, it's ironic because of Sam and Frodo being parallels to Baron and Luthien.
Sam betrays Frodo's confidence to Frodo and Pippin.
To Merry and Pippin?
To Merry and Pippin. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Right. Yeah. It's true. Though it was, before he was infenestrated and brought into the thing. But anyway, whatever. Point is, yes, I like that. I mean, I do like that. And this also is a reason to separate him from everybody else. Like, we don't even need to have... Like, Beleg could be organizing a very efficient search, right? But he's not looking in the right place because he doesn't know Luthien like Dairon knows Luthien. Just as it's not Aragorn who finds Frodo, it's Sam who finds Frodo, right? So yeah, I think that's really interesting. Okay, yeah, no, so that's really cool. I like that a lot. Then all we have to do, and somebody, who is it? Anthea was talking about the sort of the eagle parallel with Fingon, of course, right? Fingon singing a song and praying to man. There is him expressing his distress and that being heard. Right.
Manway to whom all birds are dear. Yeah.
Exactly. So all we could have not a identical, obviously, but a kind of a parallel situation. All we would have to have is Dairon. If Dairon is going to make a beeline, there is no beeline to Angband from Doriath. Like you can't get this. You can't get there in a straight line, right? But in any direction he goes, he's going to be near the Crissaegrim, right? So we could have him sneaking around through the pass of Tol Sirion, under the mountains, right? And we have Dairon singing a song. That's like he does, right? And he would be singing a song. He would be, because he'd know that Luthien was ahead of him, right? He'd know that Luthien was going to get there first. He's afraid he's not going to get there in time. He knows that she needs help, and that she's gonna get. And so he's singing, and all the eagles have to do is hear him, like they do. Like he doesn't even have to be singing to an eagle, right? It's not like he's sending a moth to the eagle to summon them, right? His song could be a song sung essentially to Manwë, and Manwë hears. We know that Manwë has mercy on account of the eagles come to pick them up, right? So that means that Manwë is going to get involved. I think if we kind of signal that a little bit, would be no bad thing, actually, because it's super understated in the text. In fact, if we did it right, we could be helping to undermine the whole eagle as taxi transportation concept. If we just have Dairon on the way to Angband, but not at Angband yet, singing a song, an intercessory song, right, about how Luthien needs help and how worried he is about her, and that song being heard, and then we just show like the Rondor, right, spreading his wings in his eyrie, and then when he shows up, it's not like, oh, how convenient, an eagle for some reason shows up to rescue them. Now we know why that has happened, and having Dairon be instrumental to that, I think that's really interesting, right? I mean, I think that's that's a fascinating. I'd never imagined that role for Dairon, but I like that. That's a really great payoff for Dairon. And by the way, also enables us to leave him in limbo.
Yeah.
Right. If he's setting out for Angband and he's not getting to Angband, but we just see him interceding, and then the Eagles go and we don't hear from him again. Right. He can disappear. If we want to disappear him for a while, we don't have to. I mean, I don't like how he just vanishes. And then, I mean, lack of payoff is why I dislike the Dairon story in the text, because we don't get the Dairon payoff, and I want some Dairon payoff. And it's fine. Like, I'm not blaming Tolkien. It's not Dairon's story, right? So Dairon gets a sentence, and then it's okay. But we have more time, so let's pay him off a little bit more. But we don't have to do it right away. He can vanish. He can vanish. And we don't have to bring him back until next season or the season after that or something if we didn't want to, because the rest of the timeline of the rest of the season is pretty short.
Right. And one of the things that I like about doing Dairon in this way is that it allows us to send other named characters out of Doriath, and even if none of their missions pan out, the very fact that Dairon knew something that they didn't, and his mission does kind of pay off.
The viewer will know that
pays off their stuff too.
Yeah, right. Agreed.
Narratively.
Yeah. The help coming from Doriath did something, right? Something was accomplished by that, other than a tense standoff between Mablung and Killicorn or whatever, or Orodreth, when he shows up. Okay. So later on, I think that means we can postpone deciding Dairon's later fate, can't we? There were a whole bunch of suggestions especially involving Dairon and the second kinslaying in Doriath, which I like. I like a lot. And one of the reasons I like that a lot is that we're starting to run low on named Doriath characters by then. Yes. So having some more folks around. And by then it's going to feel almost like, it is going to be exactly like the whole next generation, right? So Dairon is going to be one of the crusty old guard at that point, and so it puts him in a very now he's junior varsity in the Doriath team, right? I mean, there's no question he is not on the same level as Mablung or Beleg or Celeborn, right, in the Doriath hierarchy here. But when Dior comes back, Dairon is going to be like Uncle Dairon, right, to Dior when Dior comes in. So he's going to be in a very different. He's going to be the elder statesman, in Dairon's court or Dior's court. Sorry. So yeah, it's
the Uncle Iroh of Doriath sounds good.
yeah. I think that he there's a lot of stuff that he can do there. I don't think we need to send him. The hardest time I've always had, it's not just a lack of payoff, it's that I'm pretty good at suspending disbelief, but of course one of the things that I always really appreciated when the first time I read On Fairy Stories and I got to the place where Tolkien talks about the difference between secondary belief and the willing suspension of disbelief, right? And Tolkien saying, look, if you get to the place where you are willingly suspending disbelief, the art has failed, right? And I'm not usually, I don't usually find myself in a mirror. I have to suspend disbelief. Again, I'm good at suspending disbelief. I can suspend disbelief as well as anybody I know. I can go along with a really implausible plot quite cheerfully for quite some time. However, that I always felt. I always felt the Dairon story to be a place where I was suspending disbelief. Because I have a hard time investing true secondary belief in the idea that Dairon just went off and was never even checked in. Seriously? unless something prevented him, why on earth would he never so he's like, I'm searching for Luthien, but I'm going to transform that into a one-way trip that I just like. I never got it. It never made sense to me. It was not. I'm not saying that there can't be stories that could be invented that could explain that. You can explain that in various ways, but I found it hard. I always found that sentence difficult to accept. I had to do imaginative work on my own to wrap my mind around why the story would happen that way. So anyway, that's why I'm really glad to come back and spend some time. Since Tolkien made me use my imagination about Dairon anyway, well, we're going to use our imaginations about Dairon. So there we go. And Tolkien has nobody to blame but himself for the fact that we're doing that. Okay. Well, cool. That's great. That's great. And this is me being restrained and not talking about Dairon's later fate, because that's like a season 9 question or something like that.
But I do like the idea of keeping him around, because we'll have options of what to do with him later. And even the suggestion that he's the one who writes the Lay of Lathian, if we keep him around, he can do that. But he would need to witness the end of the story to be the author of it. And if it's not him, then who wrote it? And wouldn't it be nice to have the greatest minstrel of Doriath be the author of the Lay of Lathian?
Absolutely. I love that.
Someone who loves Luthien, has her point of view in the whole story. Like, yeah, of course. Yeah. But only if we can bring him around to having some peace with what happens. So,
absolutely. There has to be some resolution there. Not just that he has to know the end of the story, as you say, but yeah.
So I think that what we've set up here would still leave that as an open possibility, and the other stuff with the future of Doriath, or the second or the third Kinslang or whatever. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He can still be following around Luthien's kids and grandkids.
Exactly. I find that quite charming, actually. David is suggesting we kill off Dairon at exactly the point where the Lay of Lathian poem ends. That's an awesome suggestion. Oh man. It would be hard. Because it's right at the, we're getting ready to return to Doriath, basically, is when it ends. It's right after we'd have to have Karkaroth kill him, basically, is kind of what we'd have to do to make it fit with that. That's hilarious. That is hilarious. Oh man. Okay. Anyway, that's a funny suggestion, but I still like keeping him alive. Okay. We're about out of time. Let's just glance at the overview here, and then we can pick up the rest of the stuff next time. So the overview of episodes 4 through 7. So episode 4 is our Doriath bottle episode. That's the Tunuviel episode, ending with Baron leaving. The incarceration in Hirulorn is going to happen in episode 5, right? So at the same time that that's happening, we're getting Baron in Nargothrond, and Finrad is... So, end of episode 5, Finrad and Baron are setting out from Nargothrond, right? With their 12 companions, right? And Luthien is imprisoned in the tree, and Kelgorm and Curufin are smiling quietly to themselves, watching Finrad leave, planning the full usurpation, which will come later on. And we have the Sauron and Thuringwethil squabble, right?
We probably have Luthien escape the treehouse in episode 5.
Right. Yeah, that would make sense.
So, that would be her conclusion.
That would be the end, right? Okay, right. So we have the whole tree drama in episode 5. Okay, yep, that gives her not just a single static point in episode 5. Okay, so then episode 6 ends with the capture of Finrad and Baron, right? So we end episode 6 with them in prison, and Luthien in prison in Nargothrond, and Celegorm and Curufin beginning to develop their wicked scheme to A, usurp Nargothrond, and B, marry Luthien off to Celegorm. Okay, that seems to work. Now, you have a question there with Thurin Gwethel, because if we bring in Thurin Gwethel in episode 5, if we don't bring in Thurin Gwethel and have the her perception of Sauron's betrayal of her, then we don't get anything from Sauron at all until we show up in episode 6. And I don't think we want to have the conflict between Sauron and Thurin Gwethel in the same episode as we have the conflict between Sauron and Finrad, right? Sauron needs to be pretty clearly established as he will have, pushed back the attack from beneath, right, from Thurin Gwethel, and asserted his authority. All we would need, if we're going to have Thurin Gwethel, how do we establish Thurin Gwethel's plan to try to break into the pot of evil? We're going to have her executing that plan in 7, right? What was that, Nick?
Without her talking about it to somebody, I don't see how you could. So unless she just sits there and pontificates about her double evil,
we just give her a soliloquy. How hard is that?
Right.
Right. Right. So we do
to
need
the Lady of Secrets.
We have to have some conflict between Thurin Gwethel and Sauron. So if we put it in 5, then the audience knows that she wants what's in the pot of evil, and Sauron doesn't want to share.
Yeah.
So she would have made whatever her argument was to Sauron at that point.
In 5. Yeah.
Right. And when she doesn't get what she wants, we don't know what her next move is. But once she makes a next move, it'll be like, this is because.
So presumably where she's going to be in her own little story arc in episode 6 is she would dissemble because she's Thurin Gwethel and that's what she does, right? So by the end of episode 5, she has decided that Sauron has betrayed her and she's going to get her own back, right? So she is now, by the end of episode 5, she has decided she is going to be Sauron's enemy, basically. She's going to try to seize the power for herself. But in episode 6, we will see her apparently acting her normal supporting role. Like she can be physically present during the song battle, right? And actually that could be an interesting way for us to show where she is, right? Because she could be looking on. All we have to do is show her being interested and excited by the fact that it looks like Finrad might possibly win, right? Because it's not gonna, the song battle isn't gonna go all Sauron's way all the time, right? So all we have to do is show her be interested and maybe a little cheerful when things appear to are going Finrod's way, and then he loses, and then she's like, oh, okay, well, okay, I thought there might be an opportunity there, but no opportunity after all.
See, I'm having trouble with the idea that after everything that Sauron and Thurin Gwethel have been through, that she would rather see Finrad defeat Sauron in a song duel, right? I feel like enemies, actual, her and Sauron being actual enemies. It seems like it would be very difficult to get there. Rivals, I could see, right?
No, all I mean,
and if we had been setting up a rivalry up until this point, then maybe enmity could be a step that we could go to here. But it seems I'm a little leery of going that far that quickly.
All I'm saying is that she would see a potential opportunity for her here to get her own back. one way or another. I mean, I don't think she would necessarily believe that Sauron is going to mop that Finrod's going to mop the floor with Sauron, right? Or that he's going to be destroyed and banished or something like that. But if he's weakened, I don't know.
Do we need to show anything? Is I guess where I'm thinking is that we know that they've had a disagreement. We know what she wants out of the situation and that she's been denied. And so let's say she sticks around business as usual all through this next episode. It'll be like, oh, I guess they got over that, or maybe that'll come back later. And then the very first opportunity she has, she tries to steal the souls herself. And that shows what she was doing about it. Like, she kept doing her own thing. She's not anti-Sauron, but she does want those souls.
Yeah,
and she
does
will
want the power
disobey
for
him
herself.
to get.
Yeah.
She'll disobey him to get access to that power.
Right. Well, I want to think through a little bit more. I'm still feeling a little fuzzy in my head anyway about exactly what she's trying to do, like what her plan is precisely. We were a little vague about that. Like that she's trying to steal things for herself, steal the power for herself in some way or other. And therefore puts herself at ground zero when this power is released. That I'm still fine with. But I guess I was just thinking of ways in which, because we don't want to give her, it doesn't make sense for her to have any interlocutors. Nick, is exactly what I'm thinking. Like, if we wanted to do any work to show what she's thinking, that she's, just to, because we're not going to get, she's not going to be on screen for a whole lot of time, in all of these episodes put together, right? So being able to kind of, we could have opportunities to communicate this if we need to make sure that folks are getting it without her talking about it aloud. But anyway, we can kind of work that out. We'll get there when we talk about episode 7 for sure. Okay, then we've got episode 7. Towers blow up. Kelgorm writes to Doriath after she leaves.
Yeah, I don't think that's workable.
Yeah, that square is just kind of there.
Right.
There's a couple issues that we were going to have her not know about the proposal going into the letter. Yeah. So I'm not sure at what point we're revealing to the audience that that's the plan. Like, I know that the audience is going to see Curfin and Kelgorm plotting things that Luthien doesn't know. Right. But I didn't know where and how that was going to happen and who the messenger to Doriath is going to be. Like, there's a few question marks all around that whole thing. Yeah. Thingol won't get the letter until after she's left.
Mm.
But I assume it was going to be sent before.
There's another thing about this that I'm a little concerned about, and we can either work this out another time or we could just leave it as a challenge for episode 7. And that's putting Finrod's death and Luthien's destruction of the tower in the same episode smacks of having 2 episodes in one episode.
But
it's not an insurmountable
the song duel with Sauron and then the werewolf eating his face in the same episode is just as bad.
It's similar, right, and that's like looking at this. There's no simple, easy way out of that situation. It's just something that we may want to kind of be aware of.
I think that the nice thing is that fighting the werewolf and dying is Finrod's only job in episode 7. So it's not like he's doing multiple things in episode 7. He just does the one thing, setting up, therefore, the beautiful tableau of Baron holding his dead body when Luthien comes to rescue him, right?
Right. I mean, and if it happens like that, then sure. I just, I want us to be aware of the fact that not putting Finrod's death, putting a lot of space between Finrod's death and the end of the episode does diminish his death, and we should kind of be aware of that that would happen if we're not careful here.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. There's a lot going on in episode 7. I mean, this is a huge action-packed episode, and there's going to be a lot to do. And I think we're going to need to not do anything in Nargothrond in episode 7, I think, because there's just not going to be time. Everything will be like episode 7 will be like the Tulsirian bottle episode, essentially, where we only get things that are happening at Tulsirian, and then we resume with the political intrigue in episode 8, right at the beginning of episode 8. Okay, yeah, all right. So we'll think about how that works. I think we can do Thingol's death in there. The biggest challenge is going to be the juxtaposition of Huon fighting wolves at the same time that Finrad is fighting wolves. This is going to be happening simultaneously, basically, right? There's a lot of wolves being fought in this episode, which is a wonderful transition into what we will start with next time, which is Sauron's duels and all of the wolf fighting that is happening. So many wolves fought and overcome in 3 in 1 episode. Draugluin, prison werewolf, nameless prison werewolf, Draugluin, and wolf Sauron as well. So what do we do? This is
a lot of wolf fighting.
It's a lot of wolf fighting going on here.
And that's the pared down version so far.
Yes. Yeah. It's if we only show one wolf attack in the prison, right? So anyway, we'll talk about
and
this
if we
next time.
show only one wolf attacking Huon, because Draugluin wasn't supposed to be the first wolf out the gate there.
Right.
True.
So yeah, there's a lot of wolves. I mean, it's the Isle of Werewolves.
It's the Isle of Werewolves, right? I mean, sure, we can have plenty of wolves, but anyway, yeah, I kind of think dogfights are going to get tedious by the end of this episode if we're not really careful. So anyway, okay, so we'll discuss that issue at the beginning of next time, and then we're going to continue. So we'll look at, especially at the transition also into 7 and 8, how we're going to resume. This next segment actually is going to be really challenging, I think. Not only transitioning from this back into the political stuff with Celegorm and Curufin, leading to Baron's Leap and stuff. But then also that sequence with the I'm going to go by myself, honey, you stay behind. How are we going to manage that? And what's going to happen there? And where is that going to fit? How's that going to line up with the other things? And then we get to Angband. So we'll be looking at basically from Tulsirian to Angband next time. And we'll start with the how do we streamline the wolf issues there in episode 7. So awesome. With that, we'll let everybody go. Our next session is going to be a Thursday, April 7th. So we continue in not having to cancel episodes, which has been pretty cool. So thank you, everybody. Awesome work here today. This was I love the Hero Lorne stuff. I'm loving this. The thing that I love most about season 6 so far is the kind of the way it keeps like doing itself, like all of these parallels and foreshadowings and everything that we're able to do. It just like the whole escape from bondage theme just keeps rolling itself out in these really logical and compelling ways, which I think is really, really awesome. So anyway, thank you guys for joining me and for your contributions. Thanks everybody who's been listening here this evening. And I will say, as always, thanks for listening and Godspeed.